On Friday, many Starbucks customers across the U.S. and Canada were treated to free drinks when the payment system at Starbucks crashed. A widespread system outage prompted many outlets to close early. Others decided to give drinks for free as a gesture of goodwill. Starbucks said the crash was caused by a failure in its daily computer system refresh. But the incident shows how much companies rely on technology and what happens when something goes wrong and there's no backup plan. It's time for the Digital Divide. Daniel Debow is Senior VP of Emerging Technologies at Salesforce, and Mark Nunnikhoven, Senior Research Scientist at OpenDNS in Ottawa. Hello to you both.
Hi, Amanda.
Daniel, let's start with, it does seem as though we've seen a couple of incidents lately where it isn't just an isolated case, it's actually kind of a system-wide failure. Should we expect more of this? Is this kind of sort of bugginess, or can we get conspiracy-minded about it?
Well, I definitely don't think there's any conspiracy, and I don't know whether this is more or less than has occurred, and actually my hunch is probably less.
Yep.
But what happens is we start to become so used to technology becoming almost passive and in the background and invisible and always on that we're actually shocked when something doesn't work, like the point of sale system at Starbucks. And I think that's what's really happening, is that we become so comfortable, and actually technology really, really works and is so up all the time that when it breaks, we get frustrated. There's this great Louis C.K. thing about how people are upset when the Wi-Fi in the airplane doesn't work. Right. They forget that they're in an airplane using Wi-Fi. It's the same sort of phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, so Mark, that's obviously something we do rely on technology. Then that gets us pretty quickly to, well, there's a lot of technology we need to be able to rely on. So let's take that piece first. Are we overly reliant? You know, we think about things like the driverless car, but there's also plenty of technology now that runs our elevator systems and all kinds of things that we really do not want to fail. Is there enough built-in redundancy in our systems?
I think it depends on the system, Amanda, and we're not necessarily overly reliant because technologies enable us to do some pretty fantastic things. But I think specifically with the payment example, it's really easy to forget that this technology has grown up and is layer upon layer of other technologies. It's not simple as it appears from that transaction perspective, and I think that's important to keep in mind.
What do you mean by that? It's doing more than just taking my money and giving me a bill?
Yeah, and what happens there is, it seems simple as you describe it, but really what's happening in the background is that local point of sale system is checking with multiple points in the back end, going eventually up to VisaNet or MasterCard's back end network, verifying the transaction, verifying the identities involved in that transaction, and sending the results all the way back. There's multiple steps in this chain, and every one of those has to work.
But so let's stick with the Starbucks example for a minute. I mean, my first job was in retail at a Dairy Queen. And we did a lot of transactions without, the register. There was a drawer that opened like a kid's toy.
Right.
It was all kind of mental. There's certainly no credit cards, and debit hadn't been invented yet. But if I were a franchise owner of a Starbucks, I would have wanted my employees to say, sorry folks, it's cash only. Right. Have them do the math in their heads, have them keep the till, do the best they can. Nobody's going to kill them if they're a few cents out, and actually run it like a business would have been run 15 years ago. Are we letting people get away without doing simple math anymore?
Separate question, and probably the answer is yes. Starbucks, I think, by the way, all company owned. I don't think they have
You're
franchisees.
right, yes, not franchisees.
And in fact, I think in some cases, the Starbucks example, some local entrepreneurial managers said, we're just going to create this as a customer service experience and give away free coffee for a little while.
I wondered how the company was going to respond to that.
Yeah, well, I think probably gave kudos to those people, said, look, make the customer happy, let's go through this problem and let's move forward. Yeah. I think it does point out the importance of people being able to have a backup plan or be able to improvise when something doesn't work. And that's really important, and I think that's something that all businesses, big and small, should have. You become reliant on technology, you should have a backup plan so that you can continue to move forward, a business redundancy operation. After September 11th, I think a lot of banks and financial institutions have those ability now that they literally within a few hours could be up and running, but that hasn't percolated through the broader economy to think about what is our backup plan for power, for internet, for other things.
And as we keep developing technology, and I'll start with you, Daniel, because I know this is right in your wheelhouse, does the cloud improve our ability to have backups, or does it actually make us more vulnerable to sort of system-wide failures? To the point of kind of the layering of technology, does it help that now it's all kind of stored somewhere else, or does that make it worse?
I think the cloud dramatically improves the likelihood that we're going to be able to recover from something and that we will never get into a problem in the first place. And part of that is just human nature, right? A small hairdresser or coffee shop owner cannot invest in redundant systems and IT personnel and security procedures, but a centralized cloud provider for CRM like Salesforce or any other provider, that's their business. They're going to make sure that it's up and running and working all the time. In the same way that for the longest time, people didn't run their own backyard power generator. They trust on the utility that's going to make sure that that works. And if something goes wrong, they know how to fix it. Similar with the cloud. So I think on the whole, it's sort of ironic. A lot of companies in the early days, it's moved now, were hesitant to move to the cloud because we can manage it here physically, this thing's here. But it turns out it's actually more secure, more uptime, and more reliable when you move to the cloud, and much cheaper when you move to the cloud.
I mean, Mark, one thing obviously that this raises, I was kind of half kidding about a conspiracy, some hacker trying to shut down Starbucks. Although I could imagine Starbucks being at the top of lists of hackers for places they want to shut down. Is the cloud increasing security for us in the ways that Daniel is talking about, because it does, it outsources that problem, it makes it less expensive, it lets somebody else run the expertise, or is it creating new vulnerabilities to cyber terrorism, which is something obviously that we all have to think about?
And that's a good point. Realistically, the cloud is a net win for security. And the reason for that is simple. You're dealing with a cloud service provider who is now taking on half the load for the security of your deployment. So they're managing the physical access to the data centers, the network level, the virtualization layers, all these core technologies. And what it does is allows you as a consumer of cloud services to focus on the key things like protecting your apps and your data. So you don't reduce your overall security responsibilities, but what you're doing is getting a world-class provider, someone like an AWS, a Microsoft, a Salesforce, to provide that security for you.
All right, Mark, I'm just curious for your answer. Do you think the employees should have given the coffee away for free, or should they have charged cash only?
I think giving it away for free is a fantastic PR move, and it's great customer service.
All right. See, I would probably be fired from my job at Starbucks today because I would have asked the customer.
You made the right career choice.
Mark, thanks for being with us. Daniel, that's the digital divide.